Hi, I'm Geoff Weisenberger, the editor and publisher of Modern Steel Construction magazine, and I am here at SafetyCon, which is part of NASCC, the Steel Conference. And we're in Louisville, and with me is Julia Kunlo, president of Evolution Safety Resources, and then Justin Gilbert, who is president of SteelFab's Oregon division. And today we're going to be talking about safety, specifically OSHA compliance, as well as liability reduction. So thank you both for being here.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Thank you. Yeah, let's dive into it. Let's just get right into the compliance question. For those who are focusing on compliance, can we start with the basics?
Yeah, absolutely. What a fun and engaging way to start to talk about OSHA compliance.
The basics.
So I think that, specifically looking at fabricators, which is how Justin and I work together, so it's a good way for us to focus. I like to talk about OSHA compliance by looking at the things that you're most likely to get cited for, and then starting from there. So you can go on the OSHA website and look up the top 10 types of things that you'll get cited for within your industry. So for fabrication, we're talking lockout, tagout, forklifts, machine guarding, those types of items. And those are really great places to get started because they're high risk, and also if OSHA were to come in, what they'd be looking for. So it's good for you to make sure you're buttoned up on those things.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect. How often do those things change? Do you see trends year over year, or is it just always the same thing?
Such a good question. It is always the same thing. Yeah, the order of that top 10 sometimes dances around a little bit, but there's very clear training on what citation officers are supposed to be looking for when they come into your facility. So by looking at that list, it can give you some really good guidance.
Okay, good to hear. So when I've heard of mock audits, like mock OSHA audits, can you talk a little bit about that? What are the first things you look for when you're kind of doing that practice run, so to speak?
Yeah, so a mock OSHA audit is basically we come in and we pretend to be OSHA, even though we're not, because we can't cite you or fine you or do anything like that. But one of our guys who works for us, he actually used to be OSHA. He was on the dark side before he came over to consulting.
Gotcha.
So he goes into our clients' facilities and he basically puts that OSHA hat back on and does the inspection as if he were a compliance officer. And some of the low-hanging fruit that he's going to be looking for is PPE, guarding, HAZCOM, respiratory protection. He's going to want to take a look at your manual, make sure that what you're saying you're doing in writing matches what you're doing in principle. Do some interviews with your employees to make sure they understand those policies and can answer the questions the way the book is written. Your location just went through one. You can probably tell us exactly what it felt like to get a mock OSHA inspection.
And honestly, it was absolutely awesome because you think about it, right? I mean, it's so intimidating when you hear that you're going to have OSHA anything inside your plant, whether it's mock or real or whatever. Yeah. And so it was so nice to have this for the preparation because now everybody can get used to the questions, they can understand. And you're educating, but you also give them confidence that they already know some of these answers. So that way, when the audit does come, they're the most comfortable selves. They're ready to go. They understand. And they're able to ask you guys questions as they're going just to make sure we have everything buttoned up. But yeah, ESR actually came in. They helped us have a whole compliance calendar to make sure we can do these audits as we go to help train us. So that way, that we're covered year round and making ourselves better every day.
Well, so how long does one of these mock audits last, or even a real audit?
So there really isn't a guideline in terms of saying it has to be a certain amount of hours. When we come on site, generally we're going to show up the day before, because it's a surprise. In true mock audit fashion, you don't know we're going to show up, right?
That's right.
So we kind of show up, we say what we're here to do, we request a couple items up front, we go away, we give you some time to prepare, and then we come back the next day to actually do the physical hazard. So that way everyone can wrap their brains around it and bring their best selves. So usually we're on site about a day and a half, and then it takes us another day and a half on the back end to get in the report. Because for us, we like to send it in and say, if we were OSHA, here's what that fine amount might look like, and here's the actual citation you would receive. So that way it feels exactly what an OSHA inspection would feel like.
Okay. Yeah. You mentioned a manual earlier, so it just brings up the question about documentation. So what sort of documentation, or what's maybe the most important safety documentation and record-keeping items that you want to stay on top of?
Oh my gosh, all of it?
All of them, okay.
All the paperwork. My favorite thing, anytime we're doing an inspection, you ask a question, oh, do you do this item? Oh yeah, sure we do. And then the best follow-up question is, well, prove it. Prove it. Prove to me that you did that inspection, or prove to me that you did that training class, right? And how do you prove it? Documentation. Yeah. So I would say if you were going to pick one piece of paperwork to really stay on top of, it would be your training records, right? Okay. That is your liability control as a fabricator, saying we identified it, we talked about it, and our employees understand how to identify it and what we expect.
Okay.
So I'd say training records probably number one, and then inspection records would be number two, showing that you're constantly keeping your eyes open and you're looking for risks as they change in your workspace.
Sure. Good to hear. What about, so let's say things go off the track, so to speak. Let's talk about fines. I mean, what are some common fines?
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
So if we're going to be talking about an other than serious or a serious citation, so basically the first time you've ever hit OSHA's radar, they come on site and they find something they've never found before. Those fines can go up to $16,000 per citation. Yeah. And if you're talking willful or repeat, they can go up to $165,000 per citation.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And there's a new emphasis program. It's called Instance by Instance, IBI, which basically means instead of grouping your citations together and giving you one lump sum, it's now being broken apart so you can get several citations. The goal being that per visit, it's just more money, trying to really encourage employers, to be safe by hitting them in their wallets if they're not.
Yeah.
So obviously you want to be prepared.
Right.
Nobody's sitting around with that type of money just ready to throw at a problem.
No. It's funny that kind of equating it to doing a home repair. There's fun money to spend, and then there's the kind of money you spend on something like we just did a bathroom redo, and then right after that we had to replace one of our furnaces, and that's the money you don't want to spend.
I am absolutely going to steal that analogy because I just had to redo my roof, and I was like, this is the least fun money I've ever spent. Yeah, that's exactly what it would feel like.
So do them? I guess obviously part of the mock audits is like to kind of reduce the risk of that sort of thing. Do they come up often? Like when a mock audit is being done, everything you tweak things as needed, but do you find a lot of finable things that come up in the mock ones?
Yeah, that's our job, right? If you're going to bring us on site, we don't want to miss anything.
Right.
So it can feel like a scary laundry list, I suppose. And Justin, I'm sure you can talk more about how it feels on the back end, but we if we're going to be there, we're going to do our due diligence and help you identify anything that might bite you in the butt.
Yeah, and it's extremely detailed, and ESR does a fantastic job helping us get through that process. But yeah, you're right, from documentation to how your team works together, from production to HR to admin, and who's responsible for what. And again, it's all about continuous improvement. The whole point of the OSHA fines and everything else is to force you to do a good job and understand the industry. And so, especially for our company, as widespread as we are from plant to plant, it's really important that we're getting lessons learned from one plant to the next.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so, we have, we use consultants like ESR to be able to help us gather those lessons learned from place to place, as well as internally, just to always cover every piece we can. We don't want to have the same mistake twice.
Sure.
So, but yeah, extremely detailed.
And that actually brings up a good point. When you have multiple facilities, how many facilities in all do you have? I know it's a lot. I can't remember how many though.
15 across the country, so it's quite substantial.
Sure. Yeah. Do you kind of like do you adopt the same consultant for all of them?
We do. So we have an internal person that helps us internally, and then we also have ESR as a third party to come in to help audit us on both sides. So we're trying to cover it from two different angles.
Gotcha. Okay. I want to ask talk a little bit about voluntary OSHA visits.
Yeah.
So are those pretty common? And what are some of the ups and downs of signing up for such a thing?
Yeah, so VPP is what you're talking about, the Voluntary Protection Program through OSHA. And so basically OSHA has two separate arms. They kind of have this citation arm, the version of OSHA that we've been talking about so far. And then they've got a consultative arm, which is they're not connected, they're separate, they come in and they'll offer free advice.
Yeah.
So you invite them into your facility, you get an expert who gets to come in, give you advice, very much like a mock OSHA inspection, right? Except it's not mock, it's really OSHA.
Right.
And I would say the advantages of that are very similar to the advantages we've already talked about, right? Fresh set of eyes, they're coming in, they're going to be detailed, you're going to get a list of things to work on, so in that effort of continuous improvement, you're always staying vigilant, right? You don't kind of get eye blind. I would say the downsides of that perhaps is that the repairs are not optional. So you have to make sure that if you're going to invite them in and they identify things, you've got the time and the resources available to make those corrections.
Sure.
Because what you can't do is invite in OSHA, have them identify needs, and then say, well, that's not a priority for me. Like, this is OSHA. Yeah, it's not a recommendation. You're 100% right.
We're not asking you, we're telling you.
Right. So, and I don't know that maybe that's not a downside because it's very motivating, right? You have to hop right on it. But it is one of those things that before you invite them in, make sure your calendar and your budget has enough wiggle room to be able to quickly solve what it is they're identifying because it is not an optional repair at that point.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So what are some of the more common citations, violations, so to speak?
Yeah, gosh, the top 10 for fabrication, we're going to be looking at fall protection, HAZCOM, respiratory protection, lockout, tagout, guarding, forklifts. What are some of the big risks in your space?
Yeah, cranes is the biggest thing for us, right? So crane safety is a huge
Cranes
one. Like you said, eye protection, of course. Hand protection, too, is becoming more and more prevalent.
Yep.
Yeah, those are the top ones.
So what's a good resource as far as information to find out like if there's like specific requirements for a state or a region?
The OSHA website is really where you're going to go. So if you go on the OSHA website, there are so many wonderful free resources. I said in the speech I gave yesterday, I was like, I am cheap. So I'm on the OSHA website constantly because they've got all these really great free things for companies to use. They've got training videos. You can go on there and put in your NAICS code and look up a very personalized top 10 for your industry. So that's how, for y'all, if we say, if we were OSHA, what would we look at? We go in, we type in your code so we know exactly what they're looking for so we can look for it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Those are tools you can do, and then you can certainly go there to find the site-specific plans as well for different states.
Gotcha.
And to speak that too, we've done mock audit with you. We've done a real actual VPP audit, and we've actually had a real one come in, and no citations, no issues.
Oh, that's
phenomenal. And
rock on, baby.
that was
Yeah,
exactly
that's what we like to hear.
yeah,
Exactly
all within the
what we
same. Almost all within the same year.
It was a very
all
busy
back to
year.
back. Yeah, but fantastic. And it's a good win for our guys when they can achieve that.
Yeah. Yeah, you guys work hard for it.
So yeah, when we are talking about like audits as like something you prepare for and like probably a little bit obviously in advance, and then the audit happens. It doesn't take all that long, but just throughout the rest of the year, it's not a situation where we only think about safety right before the OSHA audit or the mock audit. You have to think about it all the time. So how do you keep people on their toes and just kind of stay on top of risks throughout the year?
Oh, that is such a good question. And I think the short answer is it's super different for each company because what works over here is not going to work over there.
Yeah.
It's dependent upon culture and what type of guidance you're getting from leadership at that organization, right? I think Justin's going to have some great insight for what works for him, but I can say SteelFab is very systematic. They like having a calendar and a system and a process which holds them accountable. Do you want to speak to that a little bit? That works great for you guys.
It's kind of multi-tiered. So first we have the yearly calendar that ESR helped us create, and so we go through that, and that's got specific audits all across the board for looking at from even fire extinguishers to our paint documents to everything across the sun. And then from there, we go into a monthly safety meeting that we do.
Okay.
And what I've really found with success in the monthly safety meeting is hands-on training.
Sure.
So when we're talking crane safety, we're using the crane as a group.
Yeah.
My favorite is fire safety. We'll light a fire in the plant, and we'll have everybody go actually extinguish the fire.
Wow.
And honestly, another fun story of that was we did it so everybody was comfortable using a fire extinguisher because you hear the safety, but actually doing it, right? You get your confidence level up. We had a fire in the plant, and our staff put it out themselves. And normally when you get in that mass panic moment, right, you don't have the confidence. You're like, well, I've heard the confidence, heard the speech, but I don't know if I'm the guy that should do this, right? But when you've done it, you just go in reaction mode. And same thing for safety, right? So we've had a dummy that we put, and we've rolled a beam off a skid and crushed the dummy to remind everybody, hey, this is how fast things happen. Don't get complacent, right? So the monthly safety meetings are getting more hands-on, more interactive. And then we do a weekly toolbox talk too. So usually it's Monday morning in the plant, and so each supervisor group, small groups, get together. They bring up a different safety topic that ESR and others have helped us just kind of generate through, just always keeping safety at the forefront of their deal. Because you mentioned culture, and safety is truly a culture thing. So it's got to be embedded in you. It's got to be everything you do. It's got to be full safety. Like you said, if it's just a topic you bring up time to time, you're vigilant for 2 seconds and then you get complacent. You're vigilant and you're complacent.
Right.
But whenever you have a full, it's inbred in what you do. You think about it constantly. It's in your speech. It's what you do. And what I love to do is when we have like a shop tour is where I can best test our safety culture. Sure. How well are our people watching out for the new person walking through that plant? And how's
I
the
love
team
that.
That's I was going to ask, right, when it talks, you've got people who have been there for a long time, and then you've got your new employees.
Right.
And you talked a little bit about what the kind of the topics that you like to hit. I guess is there much of a difference between somebody starting off and versus somebody who's been there for a while? Do you ever get the sense that people who have been there for a while are like, not that they take it for granted, but I wonder sometimes if the newer employees are a little more eager and it's probably more in the forefront.
So I love it. I use that example almost every time on the plant because I always tell everybody, hey, the veterans and the rookies got to stay together.
Yeah.
Because the veterans, are more, they've been there for 25 years. It's the environment hasn't changed much. So it's easy for a veteran to get complacent, right? The rookies are going to remind them not to get complacent because they're always watching out for the new guy and the new energy. And so it's a great pair, right? Because as I was taught growing up, when you got to look for the person that's been doing what you want to do and learn from their experiences, right? Question the heck out of them when you're the new guy.
Right.
And so, let the rookies start asking all these questions. And as y'all know, when you teach a topic, you actually learn it better, right? To be prepared. Yeah. So as the rookies are coming in and the veterans are watching over them and teaching them, it's reminding them at the same time, like, hey, I know I've been here for 25 years, but this stuff can really hurt us, And, and it's good for the young guys to see the best way to do it. They get the trainings and the videos, they get the books, they get all the things, but actually sitting beside someone that's done this for 20 years and watching their craftsmanship and watching how they do it helps them learn how to apply that versus learning the hard way, right? Safety is not something you can learn the hard way.
Right. Yeah, and I imagine
Should be a bumper sticker. That was really good. Safety's not commission. I'm going to steal that.
we're going to put that on a bumper sticker.
I like that.
You get commissions.
There you go.
Let's talk a little bit about HAZCOM training. What topics should be included in that?
I'll let you jump in. I'll tell you what we've done after that.
Yeah, well, I think you hit a really good spot that it can be, when we talk about what should be included in a program, or what I'm going to say, the fast answer is we can talk about what OSHA says you have to, right? And that's a great place to start.
Right.
But then what Justin is hitting on is what actually works, which is, okay, we talked about what OSHA says we have to talk about. What does that mean here? And what are we touching? And what are we doing? And with your job, how does that interact with what you're working on, right? And so what OSHA says for HAZCOM, right, is that you have to take a look at your written program, because it has to be in your policy. You have to teach everybody how to read a safety data sheet, which is for every single chemical you have in your workplace. It's a 16-section document that tells you where it's made and what it can do and how to respond to it if ever a mistake happens. And you have to teach everybody about labeling, that if you put it in this type of container, what does the label have to say? If you move it from that container to another container, what does that secondary label have to say, right? So your formal training should have those 3 items on your agenda.
And for us, labeling has been always the hardest one to remind everybody constantly. It's almost like food service. You've got, every time you change the container, you got to relabel it.
Yeah.
And people just they move so fast. That's the easiest violation that we've seen on our side.
That's the reason that it's in the top 10 every single year, because our OSHA guy calls it OSHA candy. Like a
There you
piece of
go.
cake. Like you can just
that.
walk the whole plant and be like, man, that is OSHA candy. Like
OSHA
because
candy.
it's so easy to do, make a mistake and miss it, right?
Yes.
So those guys know that it's an easy one to find, because it's hard to do it perfect. So I think, those are the formal topics. You want to make sure you're doing that so you're covering your butt legally, right, for OSHA. But the more important thing and the more meaningful thing is actually going out into the workspace and saying, hey, these are the 5 items that you are going to be working with most often. Let's really spend some time and dive into not just how to read an SDS, but the SDS for this chemical.
Sure.
So you understand what you need to be wearing and how you would need to respond, right? And making it very practical and hands-on for the specific risks in their work area.
Okay.
And from a leadership standpoint, I like being able to understand those things and then walk through the plant and just quiz somebody. Hey, real quick, where's the SDS at? Okay, well, hey, show me this chemical. What does this look like?
Yeah.
And just start asking questions and just see how well they can get the resources out. Because they all kind of point, oh yeah, the green book's way over there. Okay, have you used it? Because this looks dusty. No. Okay, we'll open the book
It's not
up.
green anymore.
Yeah, exactly. It's getting faded. We'll open it up. Hey, what's in this book? And just from a leadership role, just asking those questions. I mean, I'm not a safety professional by far, but just being able to know enough to ask the questions and encourage it shows the importance of it. If I walk through the plant and I'm asking that question, then everybody's like, oh, okay, that's something I should pay attention to.
Sure.
So
We like saying the ouch, ouch, there's something in my eye test. It's a very formal name. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
Oh,
But
I
like,
have.
ouch, oh my gosh,
What's
this
the
got in my
acronym?
eye. What do I do? Right?
Yeah.
Ouch, ouch, there's something in my eye. What do I do? And
Right.
everybody, it's 100% like a fire extinguisher training, right?
Yes.
Of like you can talk about this, but it's different when you know how to get to the book, how to navigate it, how to find the chemical you're talking about, right? Like that practice drill
Yes.
is super fun.
yeah, you don't want to use the eyelash station for the first time in 6 months when you really need it. Right?
Absolutely.
You want to have
Yeah,
that thing
absolutely.
working.
Right. Well, you were just saying you're not necessarily a safety professional, but it
Right.
sounds like you kind of
Justin knows
have to
so much. He does not give himself
you're
any
right. You
credit.
maybe
Yeah.
not officially, but I mean that's the thing. Well,
Right.
and that brings up the question. But when it comes to training, are you looking at like when you do like your regular training? Do you try to hit the same topics over and over, or do you try to have new topics in all the time, or is it like a mixture of both? Because I know a lot of people say repeat. Certain messages don't always get through on the first time, and there's certain things. It's like yes, you're repeating it, but you have to repeat it because it's not going to sink in unless you do.
Yeah, it's a mixture for sure. And what we found, the way to mix it up is by having different individuals teach about it over and over again. So if you're going to repeat a topic, don't have the same individual do it every month. Have someone else, and make someone else learn it each time and have to present on it because they're going to have their own different style, right? We all 3 could say the same thing to somebody and they're going to hear it differently from all 3 of us because of our styles. And so they get the main point, right? But it may just not click, right? Because like you said, sometimes it's the repetition that makes it click. Sometimes it's just the style or it's who they look up to. And so you've got to find different ways to mix it up. Sometimes it's just a bullet point. Sometimes it's, hey, we're full on hazmat, we're going for it.
Right.
The fire department's here just in case, but you guys are putting this fire out,
Yeah.
right? Like it's got to be a mixture. Because otherwise, like you said, you get so complacent, just read the same forms over and over again. But to some point, if it's important to your culture, it's got to be in all of our language. So like you were kind of saying, hey, I'm not a safety professional, but I have to have enough safety knowledge to back it up.
Right.
And the point of that is establishing what our culture is going to be. So it's learning the safety buzzwords and then using it in my language as well, depending on what I'm talking about with the shop, and backing up what the shop guys and the safety professionals are talking about, just to keep that message going, right? So they hear it all the way up the chain and all the way back down. Because otherwise, if you don't repeat it, it won't be in the culture.
Right. Yeah, it's sort of like when we, at AISC, we do an annual CPR training, and I've done it for a few years. We have the same trainer, and it does get repetitive, but at the same time, I'm like, oh, right. I feel like every year there's like kind of a list of priorities of what you do, and every year I'm like, oh yeah, this is right. I don't remember that from last year. I'm glad he repeated it again. It's just like anything, like any type of situation, you hope you'll never have to use it. But
exactly,
so
but you don't want to have to.
Yet. Yeah.
Exactly.
I want the first time to be in that emergency situation.
Right.
Yeah.
But okay, so we've talked about how how we prepare, the training, all of that. What if something goes wrong anyway? So if an incident occurs, what's like the priority list as far as how you tackle it?
Oh man, that's a great question too. So we're talking basically like an employee injury or something like that, right? Okay, so you've done your due diligence, you've done your training, you've done your inspections, you've done the best you can, and then you remember that we're not a whole bunch of robots, we're a bunch of humans, and something happens anyway, right? That happens all the time. I think the most important thing first and foremost is to have run some drills, have done some training on this so everybody isn't scrambling and figuring it out.
Exactly.
So for example, I think for what we did for SteelFab, we actually made a couple like one-page documents of if an incident occurs, right? And you get those printed and you hang them around your facility so people are sort of top of mind about what to do in these moments. But the first thing you want to do is obviously kind of like secure the scene, shut everything down, make sure that everything is safe. Because oftentimes in those emergency situations, we're very quick to jump into that risky situation to help somebody, and then what you have is multiple injuries that now you're having to juggle, right?
Yeah.
So shut it down, make sure that whatever caused the risk has been secured. So if that's a falling object, making sure that it's fully placed. If it's a beam that's rolled, making sure that it's not going to continue moving. And then from there, we're basically going to make sure that we're calling the medical professional if we need to get someone to the doctor. If it's not a big injury and it's something small, and this is an FYI report, still making sure that we investigate it and take it seriously as if it had been a big incident. The reason being, these are lessons learned, right? If you have a near miss, that means that you got lucky. Congratulations, wonderful. Let's respond as if we didn't, so we can learn from this and roll it out and make sure that it doesn't happen next time. So that investigation is crucial.
Well, like you said, near misses, right? You have to blow those up every time.
Every
so
time.
It's everybody has that tendency of a near miss. Whew, okay,
that was close.
Thank goodness. It's like no time out. Like that is the biggest lesson learned you can have.
We got so lucky. Let's jump on this.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those need to be louder, in my opinion, than actually the true injury sometimes, because that's still a preventable effort, right? Than the worst case, which is a serious injury.
Yeah.
But we've done mock drills on that too. So it's, hey, you're in the plant and someone needs the ambulance for God forbid, right? Well, where does the ambulance go? Who's responsible for bringing them in? If that person's the one that's hurt, who's next in line? Like, what does this look like? Hey, if it's just like a cut or a laceration or something like that, okay, what's the standard there? And and so we actually practiced it a couple times, and we do it a couple times a year. Same thing like a fire drill. Hey, run the alarm and see how it works. And we found, you put the best systems in place on paper and you coach everybody on it, but until you actually put it in place and practice it, right, you don't get to see that, oh man, we thought Bob and Jim were going to blow the horn at the same time. They didn't. You guys are supposed to be at this place, right? Who gets the head count? How do we report that back? What does reporting look like to the other plants? And so one thing SteelFab did recently is we have a reporting software across all of our groups, and we did it first in the field to keep track of the erectors and do a safety program there, and then we brought it into the shop. And so, if something we had a small near miss yesterday, just a really minor thing, but a piece of material fell off a skid that we didn't expect to. And so it was a matter of, hey, guys, near miss, put it all out to the entire company, and then the production managers did a quick meeting. Hey, this is what happened, here's what we learned about it, and here's why this won't happen again. And it was great that our guys self-reported that, and it was great that that the production managers were talking about it real time as I'm finding out about it as well, to pull us into this conversation. All within a matter of an hour and a half of this happening, all of SteelFab got this. It's across the entire country, and I love that, because I was happy to see, okay, near miss, blow it up, get the lesson learned, share it with somebody else, because last thing I want to see happen is one plant on the West Coast has this issue, and then we actually see someone got hurt, in Alabama at the next plant, right? So. Everything in safety is mostly preventable. So, you've got to share information as fast as you get it.
Right, and it's not like you're calling out one person or a group of people. It's just like, this could happen to any of us. And it's a reminder So I was going to say, I've never worked in a steel fabrication shop, but I had a temp job a long, long time ago. Like, I think it was the summer between a couple years in college. And I was the temp agency would put me in these various like factories and, assembly plants of sorts. Anyway, there was a situation where we were putting together wood trusses. Okay. I was holding it and somebody had a nail gun. Oh. And it's interesting when you have temp employees doing this type of work. There was no training. There was none of that. And at one point, this seasoned professional was using the nail gun, and he didn't go straight in. He went in at an angle, and I felt. Then the nail went right by me. He goes, "Oh my God, are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I am." But man, that was a near miss.
Yes,
that was close to my eye, sir.
Literally, yeah.
So it's a really cool scar for you.
This would have been here. I don't know if I would. I don't know if I'd wanted it right in the eye.
And that's how he got into steel construction, because he was like, "Wood,
Everybody
I'm not
needs
doing
a
wood
sword.
I can't
trusses."
do this. I gotta go into.
He's like, "I'm gonna weld this truss together. I'm not
and
shooting
I'm gonna
nails
put on,
anymore."
put my mask on.
I'm not gonna do it anymore.
My goodness, but yeah, no, it is. It's real. I mean, obviously. I mean,
Right.
you're dealing with it all the time. When we're talking, I want to switch gears just quickly and talk about liability. So when we're talking about like liability reduction, what are some of the building blocks for that?
Yeah, gosh, that's such a good question. So I think that what we've all seen in the safety industry here recently is that safety and law and liability are all becoming really intermixed and intermingled. And it's not just about OSHA compliance anymore, right? It's also about, what if we have an employee that sues? What if we have a PR issue on one of our job sites, right? And really thinking about the full picture of how safety needs to be a part of your risk plan and your PR strategy and your marketing strategy. I mean, all these things are intertwined. And so when you think about liability, the answer to that is going to be very different depending on what industry you're talking about. But for steel fabrication, I would say the majority of the time, the biggest thing you need to consider for your liability is actually the erection of your materials. Just because, the way that the contracts are written, you create the steel, you ship it out to the job site, somebody else puts it up, right? Yep. But they're underneath of you in the contract, you're still responsible for making sure that steel is erected safely.
Right.
Even though you're not on the site, even though you don't have eyes on that project full time, how that erector is behaving and how they are handling your product is still your responsibility, legally and contractually.
Sure.
So the biggest thing you can do in terms of liability in steel fabrication, in my opinion, is basically the shoehorn of subcontractor management, which is pre-qualification of those subs, taking a look at their safety program at least once a year and making sure that they're buttoned up, their T's are crossed, their I's are dotted for what you expect. Yes. Routinely monitoring them out in the field via some type of an inspection, either via a third party or your in-house person, making sure you're viewing them and what they're saying they're delivering is what we're delivering. And then if and when there are slight gaps in what you expect, that you're managing that process. You're saying, hey, you're doing this, I'm expecting that. I'm gonna check back in a week, and in a week we need to make sure we're on the same page, right? Or whatever that plan is, and that you can show that you are truly managing safety at some level for that work that you're subcontracting. And for fabricators, that's a huge part of your liability strategy.
Gotcha.
Yeah, SteelFab does a great job. Justin, you want to talk about a little bit about how that pre-qualification process and the inspection process for your erectors?
Yeah, I mean, and it's grown significantly over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And so we do twofold. It's a safety and it's a financial with all of our subcontractors. And the biggest piece of that is mitigating risk down the road, right? The last thing we want is someone to go out of business in the process of a project or set them up for failure. And same thing on safety, right? We don't want to put someone on a job site, and we understand the GC's requirements. We're signing up for those ourselves. So we want to make sure that we're putting someone on the job site that's going to represent that as well. And then on top of that, it's hiring a third party to actually do audits either randomly or just signing them up full time for the job. And when you do that, it's so important that the person that you hire is going to partner with those on site. They're not a safety cop, right? That's going to deteriorate the job site. That's going to make it where people are less likely to report and teamwork. When you get someone that can relate to the guys in the field and be part of that process, and they become one team, even though there really is a third party separation, it allows that collaboration, that growth, and that coaching rather than, I got to hide this so I don't get in trouble. Or, and at the same time, you have to have some strict rules, right? If someone's not following the safety protocols we signed up for in the contract, then they're dismissed from the job site, right?
Sure.
So you have to take it very seriously, but you have to find the right partners to help you manage that.
Yeah, and that brings up a question like, you said you have 15 facilities across the country. That's a lot of employees, hundreds of employees, if not over 1,000.
Yeah, we're over 1,000.
And obviously, you want everybody to take it seriously. I mean, is it a situation where everybody does, or do you find that every now and then you have to kind of guide certain people, so to speak, to kind of, I mean, I guess when you push it so much at the beginning, I suppose it sticks with people. But again, that's kind of like what I was thinking about going back to when I was talking to the old guard, the old guard versus the new guard.
Right.
I wonder if sometimes things used to be different, right? Back in the day, the safety situation. I mean, we've been safe for a long time in this industry, but it's you could look back however many decades, and it probably wasn't quite as safe. Or the programs and the documentation weren't as rigid.
Right. Yeah, I could imagine what was done 30 years ago is probably a little different than today, right? And so the biggest thing, and again, my favorite one of all is when you got to wake people up. It's take a dummy and crush them.
That's right. I'm going to keep thinking. I'm going to visualize this.
And I hate it. Like, I mean, but it is an eerie silence every time we do that. Do it. We probably do it every other year. You can't do it too often, right? Because again, it'll wear off. But having that hands-on, like put a safeguarded, training program in place, right? And actually, like we're true on-site training, right? It's like the fire department, right? They're going to light a building on fire and they're going to put it out multiple times at their safety facility before they go in your house and put your fire out, right? And so it's the same thing. You want to find ways just to kind of wake people up so that they don't get complacent, right? Because like you say, it's easy to say, okay, I've been going to the same place 15 years. I've never got hurt. I don't know what, I mean, you work with the same material every day. Right. It's so easy just to and we're all human. So you don't know what someone had on if they're having an issue at home, or if they're just distracted with the vacation plans coming up, or they're excited for their kids' event tonight, or whatever's on their mind, right? People don't walk into work usually 100% focused on work. I'd like to think they do. Right. I'd like to tell you I did, right? But we're all human. There's times that life is on our mind. And so you have to also really get to know your workers, understand, okay, hey, how are they showing up to work today? Does everybody look, you have to coach your supervisors, and they have to know their team intimately to say, hey, do I see some red flags? I need to catch somebody real quick.
Right. I was wondering about that, right? Because like when you've got people working together for a long time, and you want to be able to start picking up and say, Joe, whatever, are you okay today? You seem a little off. Yeah. You seem a little distracted. Because
and support those guys, right? So if you want Joe to feel safe saying, yeah, man, I'm just really distracted with X, Y, and Z. Cool. Let's give Joe this job today. That's safer, right, than what he usually does. Or, and obviously, hopefully that's not a repeatable thing, but you got to look out for one another. And so it's a combination of, sometimes those guys need those wake-up calls in a safe way, just a reminder. Because what you don't want is the safety accidents to be wake-up calls. Right. And of course, when you have one industry-wide, right, we all sit down as an industry and say, hey, time out. This happened, even if it's international, this safety accident happened. Let's all learn from it, right? Yeah. But you still want that to be like plan B. You want plan A to be proactive training. Because if we're learning from what happened to somebody else, it was already too late for that person. Yeah. And like you said, you never know who it's going to be. It's usually someone you least expected, right? Safety. None of us. It's an accident for a reason. None of us planned for it. Right. And so, as much protection as you can do early, the better. So that way, it's not the person you care about most that's in hurt.
Sure. And I have to ask. So, Julia, first of all, how long have you been in this role?
I've been with ESR from the beginning, so I've been there about 8 years now.
Okay. Yeah. I am very curious. Like what you've probably visited a lot of facilities, and without naming names, and I know it's never going to be SteelFab, but like, can you point? I always like it's kind of morbid, but have you seen any walked into any shops where you're like, oh my gosh, this is a horror show? You guys need a lot of work. Like I know everybody needs your services. You help improve every facility you go into, but like, have you ever seen some where you guys really need my help?
Yeah. I think that obviously for us, we love when we get the call from a really sophisticated client who realizes that they need us before something bad happens, right? Where we kind of say a lot in safety that, complacency is the enemy of safety, right? And it's when we feel comfortable that these mistakes happen. And so when you get the call from that customer who hasn't had anything, but they just know in their gut, they've gotten a little complacent, they're looking for some help, that's an ideal client for us. To answer your question, we do get clients who call us after something bad has happened, right? Maybe there's been a fatality. Maybe there's been an incident. Maybe OSHA arrived on their job site and gave them a bunch of citations and they need help handling the response, right? And so obviously those clients where we're getting pulled in after that event are just in a different position of preparedness and usually buy-in from the leadership level, because if leadership isn't realizing it as a need prior to something happening,
Right.
there's a little bit more convincing that we have to do on the back end, right? Hey, you're calling us because you have to. This is what we need to make it right.
Right.
And you're right, those clients, it's you can predict it, that if you get the call after the event, you know that you're already fighting
Right,
an
there's a
uphill
reason
battle.
they're calling
There's a
you.
reason they're calling, and there's a reason that this hasn't been thought about before, because it wasn't being prioritized from the top just yet.
Right.
So those do tend to be a little bit more challenging, because we've
Sure.
just got more things to fix.
Sure, and I'm kind of being dramatic when I say like a horror show. I mean, I feel like even like our industry is like prioritized safety for a long time. So even so, the worst offenders, so to speak, are really not bad. It's just
Gosh. I mean, nobody wants their business to go under. Nobody wants to hurt an employee. No
course not.
employee wants to not meet the expectations of their supervisor, right? Like, we're all rowing in the same direction here.
Yeah.
But there have been some clients that we've, refused to do work with, because
Sure.
if we think that they're in it for the wrong reason, or that the programs that we're going to build are ultimately just there to live on a shelf and not actually be followed,
Right.
that doesn't really sit right in my chest either.
Oh, of course,
So,
yeah.
but to your point, our industry has come so far that those are the exceptions.
I think it goes back to culture again, right? So safety starts at the top, right? So I mean, from the first leader all the way down, it has to flow all the way through the industry and in each organization. If you don't believe in safety, you're asking for trouble, right? And so, like you said, it's a cultural thing. You
Yeah.
put these things in place, and everyone has to adopt it, and they've got to ingrain it. And if it's going to sit on the shelf, you're wasting your time, and you're asking for trouble at the same time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, are there any other points you want to hit? Let everybody know in terms of the OSHA's, the audits and safety in general.
My goodness. No, I think that, using OSHA minimums to get started is great. Personalizing it beyond that, you get a little bit better, make it specific to your industry, make it specific to your work area. Now let's consider liability, let's work on that shoehorn, let's build it out further. And then the most important piece, making it personal, driving it home,
Sure.
practicing it, touching it, tangible. That's how you make real impact. So if anybody takes anything away, that would be my hope, is to make it personal and make it mean something.
Yeah.
Because you're going to throw the money at it anyway to do all the other stuff. But the most important thing is that it actually takes hold where the work is being done.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you hired all these individuals for a reason, and so your
course.
job when
Get
you
'em
hired them was
home.
to take care of them.
Get 'em
and their
home.
job is to take care of the company.
Yep.
And so safety is the key that keeps that together.
Well, Justin, Juliet, thank you so much. It's been really, this has been very educational for me. I actually know a lot more about safety now.
Look at us. We did it.
I don't
You
work in a
got
fab
one,
shop, but
Justin.
yes.
Oh my goodness.
No, I appreciate it. So
Yeah.
thank you both for the discussion.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.